Hello, welcome. My name is Jim McLaughlin, I'm the facilitator. Can we do a quick round of introductions? What your name is, where you're here, where you're from, and we'll get cracking. We're aiming to make this a short meeting today. We've got some very esteemed guests, not as many of you as we might have had, but that's brilliant, that's great. We'll be plugging you for your thoughts and your ideas, and we'll all have a slightly start to our review.
So my name is Barney Crichton. I work for a company called Hatch Regeneris. We specialise in economic and social research, and we've been leading some community research for the Westway Trust, which I'm going to be presenting.
And I'm Isis Amlak. I'm a local resident, and I'm here because I'm doing a piece of work as a consultant for the Westway Trust around participatory grantmaking, which I'm going to talk about.
I'm Alex Russell, and I'm Joint Chief Exec of Westway Trust.
And I'm Conta Reynolds, one of the two directors at the Delgado Trust.
I'm Mark Lockhart, and I'm the other Joint Chief Executive of Westway.
I'm Darren Hutchinson. I'm a local resident. Kind of piggybacking on this, I sit on a couple of other trusts and things like that, and want to, we're trying to open our stuff up, and I want to see how it's done. So that's it, really.
I'm Marie Monaghan. I work for the Trust, and I work on community engagement and environment.
I'm Jason Garcia, I'm Community Engagement at Westway Trust.
Matt Bradley, Comms and Marketing at Westway Trust.
I'm Charles Andrew, I'm Communications Manager at Westway Trust.
I'm Ravel Benzela at Trust.
I'm Gaetano Fernando.
And you do it beautifully.
Community engagement. Community. We've got three parts of the meeting. The first one is Barney's going to talk for about 15 minutes about the work that he's been doing and get your responses, reactions, thoughts and ideas. And then Isis is going to talk about the work that she's been doing. We're going to have a little open forum slot where you can just contribute thoughts, ideas, ask any questions of the Westway Trust. So,
fantastic, thank you. Well, we've got some hand notes. I guess a few of you have these already, but
this way.
Isis, you've got one already.
I think I got one of the
Anyone need one more?
Fantastic. So as I mentioned, I work for a company called Hatch Regeneris. We specialise in economic and social research. For the past 6 months or so, we've been working with the Westway Trust, colleagues around the room here, to undertake some detailed research into the characteristics of the North Kensington community and to really map out and understand service delivery across the area, understanding where the current strengths are in terms of service delivery, where the gaps are, and really starting to provide some clear recommendations about how the Westway Trust could be responding to that context, and obviously a very challenging context, not just organisationally, but also within the wider community in the context of Grenfell. So our approach has been to draw on a wide range of government data sets to understand the characteristics of the area broadly, but reflecting the fact that the data only tells us part of the story, is often out of date and doesn't give us the really granular insights which you need to understand an area's context like this. We've also been taking a quite detailed process of consultation, speaking to gatekeepers from across the community to really get a sense on what the key characteristics are, and also the areas of the greatest challenge and need as well. So there's quite a lot of detail in this, and I'm not going to go through it in full, but I'll just pick out some of the key emerging findings. So just for the guys who haven't seen this already, just on the slide there with the three circles. I mean, just putting out some of the key headlines. And we've approached our analysis in terms of thinking about social well-being, economic well-being, environmental well-being, so social being all about people and communities, economic around kind of local business and kind of the vitality and vibrancy of kind of the local economy, and environmental being focused on places and spaces. And some of the key messages emerging from that are just the scale of potential within the area, within the area's residents and within the communities, but some significant barriers which are preventing those individuals to maximise their talent. Cutting across our research, there's some really overarching challenges, as we know, around social isolation, both age-specific but relating to specific parts of the community as well, in terms of different demographic groups, and distrust and anger, which has obviously been enhanced, since grandfather, which has been around for a long period of time than that. Some really important challenges around skills levels, basic skills, vocational skills, and also significant challenges around languages, which are preventing people from participating in economic opportunities. We know there's some very significant challenges around housing, both in terms of overcrowding, but also in terms of affordability as well. The research highlights some very severe challenges around health, certainly around depression and mental health. There's a really common theme which is coming out, but also around nutrition and exercise, and a real sense that there's not enough space and affordable space for people to participate in leisure and recreation activities as well. And a really important message as well, it's very easy to focus on North Kensington as one, but it's a very complex area in itself, and our area of focus here is on the Westway Trust's 5 wards. We've got a focus of 5 wards which make up North Kensington, but we know there's a lot of disparity within those wards themselves. I think as an overarching theme coming out from the data and the analysis, we discussed this a bit last night, so some of the challenges that North Kensington and its communities are facing aren't dissimilar to other parts of London, but a lot of the challenges are being brought to the fore in recent years. And some of the things which mark the area out are in particular the amount of kind of capacity and resource that actually exists within the area, and in terms of people and organisations trying to make a difference and working together, but an overarching sense that perhaps they're not working together and joined up as effectively as they can be to maximise the benefits of that resource. So I won't go into the full detail of kind of the slides overleaf, but just again, our approach has been to work through the government data, which is important in helping us to understand how the area compares to other areas, be it South Kensington or London as a whole, or national averages, and then building upon that, what the community have told us to kind of fill in those gaps and to get ahead of the data. I think in terms of social well-being, I've already touched on some of the points, but in terms of skills and employment, we've talked about a lot of people who are very willing and capable of being economically active, but need better support to be able to do so. I mentioned the kind of lack of vocational training and skills and basic skills in English and maths, and that's a challenge which is common across London and the UK as a whole, but it's certainly a theme which has come out here as well. And there are also some quite interesting challenges around young people not having enough access to kind of work experience and training opportunities as well to build their kind of work readiness, skills and confidence as well. And perhaps a little bit more specific, a lack of after-school care, stopping parents from accessing employment opportunities for young people as well. I mentioned health as being a kind of really key challenge, and some of the stats there in the local area around life expectancy and kind of mental health and depression are really stark. The stats from GP surgeries within the Kensington area show really kind of the community is really suffering from above average rates in terms of depression and mental health and life expectancy levels, which are far below London averages as well. So some really stark data as well. Some of those challenges relate to kind of food poverty, so some very kind of culturally specific challenges as well, linked to certain parts of the community. And mental health which has long been a problem in the area. The stats that we've looked at are actually for pre-Grenfell, and so we'd expect that some of those characteristics have probably worsened in the period since as well. So there's some really stark information on the health characteristics of the community. Social isolation, quite a broad category. We consider kind of the extent to which the individuals within the community suffer from a sense of isolation, participation of young people, levels of engagement and trust, and again there's a real sense of that parts of the community are suffering from kind of real challenges around social isolation. One of the kind of most interesting findings was around the fact that whilst we are in London and we're relatively well connected part of it with tube stations and public transport. Actually, there are parts of North Kensington which feel relatively isolated, and parts of the community who really struggle because of that, to access opportunities, but also to connect to wider society, to wider communities as well. A lot of the messages which have come out and are focused around young people and challenges of engaging young people, particularly challenges here around youth violence, gangs and drugs, which obviously come across London, which came out as a common theme across the research, but also kind of older people as well as being disconnected from opportunities and isolated within the community. Personal stability and prosperity, we know from the data that levels of prosperity across the area are kind of comparatively low, particularly compared to South Kensington, but also compared to kind of wider in the London averages. There are some quite specific challenges here linked to cuts in social services and public sector funding over the past decade. Specific challenges have been mentioned around closure of things like the credit union in the past few years, and housing coming out as a really big overarching theme as well. We looked at economic well-being of the local area, considering the overall vitality and diversity of the area, kind of the kind of levels of enterprise and also business responsibility as well. I think one of the most common themes coming out, which is probably a theme which is coming across in London, is just the cost of space is acting as a real constraint for enterprise, for people starting up their own businesses as well. And while spaces such as the kind of affordable workspace provided by the Westway Trust are kind of appreciated, there's not enough of them at the moment, and there's a sense that there's not good access to those. And also, this is an interesting discussion we had last night around the kind of wraparound support as well, for businesses wanting to start a business to help them, give them the skills and confidence to be able to do that as well. I think quite an important theme which we've considered as well is the idea of business responsibility, which there's not a huge amount of data on, but obviously within a kind of local area such as this, it's really important for businesses to play a role in engaging the community and taking a responsible approach to how they operate their businesses, be it through paying the London living wage or employing kind of diverse groups and in a fair and open way. I think there's some interesting ideas around how the Westway Trust can play a really important role in that as a really large landlord in the area and kind of having quite a direct role in terms of how it can curate the businesses within the estate and can ensure that those businesses are acting in a responsible way and opening up opportunities for the community as well. Working through very quickly. Finally, on environmental well-being, obviously, some of the key challenges around here related to air quality and noise quality relating to the Westway itself. The data shows that air quality is very poor compared to the acceptable limits. Members of the community have said that they really want a cleaner, safer environment. There's particular concern from local schools around the quality of the air, actually limiting them wanting to use kind of the sports facilities in the area, which is obviously quite a big concern, and a sense that there aren't enough institutions and people lobbying on behalf of the community, the local area on those matters, which obviously require quite a joint approach to lobbying partners at the regional level as well. In terms of public space and open, public realm and open space, obviously we've already mentioned concern about the quality of some of the spaces around the Westway, and that's currently the focus of a separate study being undertaken into the urban design of the area. The common message coming out from the community about a really strong desire for kind of more greening activities around the Westway itself, more garden spaces and just spaces which are kind of safer and more accessible to a broader range of people. And again, the message about needing a joined up approach to doing that, and partners working more closely together. So the first part of our research was very much about understanding the characteristics of the local area, and there'll be a chance to ask questions in a moment. The second part of our research is building upon that, starting to map out service delivery within North Kensington and really try and understand who's doing what, where the gaps are, and where the Westway should be fitting within that. Now, I think kind of the context of service delivery and kind of organisational and community capacity in North Kensington is one of the things which marks the area out, certainly from our experience across London. There are just an enormous number of organisations and groups doing things in the area. We've mapped out some of those, but it's far from comprehensive, and that ranges from strategic bodies providing statutory services from the council to the police, organisations providing thematic services from job centre plus citizens advice, and then very place-based and local organisations as well, and then a very large number of those. So in terms of some of the common messages coming out from that mapping of service delivery, and it relates directly back to some of the characteristics which I've just run through, but in terms of social wellbeing, certainly a need for more provision of services that help support young people, but also older people as well, to get into work and training, so taking a direct intervention approach there. A need to better support young people generally, but certainly giving them safe places to go where they can receive support and have fun, so it's basic things to do, but also the point about after school and preschool care, which kind of is a really important enabler for adults as well in terms of accessing employment opportunities. There's some quite specific culture and location barriers stopping people accessing health services, which were mentioned, and common themes around sports provision and making sure that's accessible and affordable to local people. Was a theme that came up as well. Economic wellbeing, I've already mentioned that workspaces, there's a strong demand here, as is the case across London, for workspace, and I know that's something that the Trust has already invested in, but I think there's more work to be done there to kind of actually engage the community within those. But then also the role that the Trust, as I mentioned, can play in terms of how it acts as a landlord locally and curates its estate to kind of support the local community as well, alongside the generation of commercial revenue, which plays a really important role in generating income for grant giving as well. And as I mentioned, in terms of environmental wellbeing, a need for a more joint approach to tackling some of those issues and not being on behalf of the community to partners such as TfL and JLA on those. So that's a very quick snapshot of kind of 6 months worth of work. Lots of data in there, lots of insights. I'm conscious I rattled through that, and so there will be a chance for questions, but just, again, if there are any questions afterwards as well, then we'll probably have to have separate conversations about those.
Questions do you have?
I've got a few.
Yeah, brilliant. Go for it.
I'll start at the beginning. High number of private schools in the borough. Around 58% of schools in RBKC are private. What percentage of pupils are private?
I don't have the number to hand, but
it's more interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So we can dig that number out. So.
My understanding is more than half of school-aged children attend private schools in the borough.
More than half. More than half
of children who are resident in the borough attend private schools. My understanding. I don't have.
We can. I'm fairly sure we've got the numbers.
It's a huge.
That's huge.
It is a huge proportion. Yes.
Well, it's 58% of the schools, but the schools are much smaller.
Mm. But some people might privately educate their kids outside of the borough as well. So
you're drawing people in from other boroughs as well.
Yeah.
So
what's the purpose of your question?
I think it's a more interesting statistic.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at the actual kids, not at the schools. So you're not looking at households. You're looking at, in Dalgarno where I work, it's going to be 98%.
Yeah.
So that's the statistic I'm after.
Yeah.
And then further on, actually, you talk about school meals. The statement you made doesn't, I may have read it too quickly because you were moving fairly quickly.
I
didn't think it made sense. 22% of free school meals eligible pupils take free school meals. Well, of course they do. So do you mean 22% of all kids have free school meals? And that's in RBKC in general, but excludes the 58% of the private schools. I'm interested in the number of children.
Yes, so we've got, yes, absolutely, and we've got the data.
So that is 22% of all kids.
No, that's probably 22% of kids going to state schools. That's what it would be. Because otherwise you can't get the stat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the data there is based on the school census, which is based on
kids attending
of state school
children.
children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, no, it's pretty diverse. I mean, the trust has to do a lot. It's got a fairly wide scope. One of the things that just from what I'm privately doing is that I'm helping Age Concern with an LGBT elderly community centre. One of the things that is that you notice that the isolation of the elderly people, is there, I noticed that there's a hand-in-hand group here. Is there some of the things about the isolation is their physical need to be able to get from A to B? Is the trust looking at that in any detail, out of curiosity? In terms of, because it has facilities, a lot of the facilities are already there, or maybe just partly volunteers from actually getting people who are isolated to the facilities that are already available, rather than new facilities. Yeah, just transport.
The role of community transport? I misunderstood what community transport is. Do you know community transport? They're a charity that use some of the space under them.
Yeah, which is possible, but I'm just thinking possibly about a connection then, about getting people from A to B, because if people are isolated, it's probably a physical need as well as a...
But they have minibuses.
Yeah.
And my understanding was that they're supposed to transport people who are isolated to where they need to be.
So maybe
you need to get in touch.
The advertisement of that for the trust, because I think the trust provides a lot of good facilities.
Yeah. I mean, I think community transport remit is to provide the service in response to. So I don't think they see it as their mission. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Their mission is to get people to services, but they'll do so if contracted or called on to do that.
Someone has to pay
so
them.
Yes, and they would require payment. But there is something about if there's a need about that. That's a sort of coordination thing. We've got the resources and facilities to do it. We just need to make it happen.
Yeah, because you've got like the Pepper Pot Club and things like that, which is all really good. So you already have the facilities, but possibly just the people getting from A to B because they can't get there.
It's a big issue for us too. In as much as you've got the old and the disabled who are isolated, and you can lay on all sorts of exciting things in the centre, but if they don't come to you, or they can't get to you, or they haven't got a carer who can push them, they're not going to come. And we, as a community centre, don't have the wherewithal to pay to get them there. And we're not going to employ a driver to drive around from A to B to C to D. Schools do that, and it's in their budget, but it's not in ours. And it is a bit of a hole. And I don't know if that's something Westway would like to support. Someone put in a request. And it costs £46 or something to join for the year, but you've still got to employ the driver.
I wonder if there's an opportunity for a sort of dial-a-ride sort of service.
Somehow.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking.
No, because a lot of people might be entitled to free access to things that they're unaware of.
Any other thoughts from anyone else? Increasing access and participation through transport.
That's really interesting.
Well, the things you mentioned, they seem to be quite active in what they do. I don't know if it's their van.
Yeah, they've got a minibus. Which was gifted to them.
Okay, so we have notes, we are recording. So want to take back and look at and see, possibly look again in the research and see if there's any clues or indications.
I don't think that we've actually spoken to the community.
Because you've got from what you said, Pepper, they have their own van, which is probably not being used constantly. I know the Hand in Hand group, which is the Catholic Church, have their own van. there must be some coordination of people being volunteered. These vans aren't constantly working.
No.
You know, they're not being used 24
Well,
hours
that's why
a day.
Westway Community
Yeah.
Transport exists.
Yeah.
To stop that happening, but it doesn't. It's not built into the budgets of the
Yes.
projects that we do. That we go out and get people physically and bring
Yeah.
in. And it might be that if there was a fund put aside for the disabled to be able to use it in the North Ken area, that they could do a dial around.
Yeah.
It's run by community transport.
Yeah.
Is the community transport, is it literally just a lot of vans? I mean, is that just literally what they're about?
Well,
I've seen
a lot of
vans
vans, they provide training obviously and insurance and stuff, but you basically hire a van, you provide the driver, or they'll provide a driver, but you pay for the driver. But they obviously train people, so that's essentially is what it is. It's a
They
minibus.
still have a scheme where if you're a voluntary organisation, you can have someone trained to use it, and there's some sort of... some
You
sort of-
pay to have your guy trained by
But
them.
you get some sort of discount
But-
then on using it.
Yes,
And we wouldn't be required to have a transport manager either, would we? If it's a charity. I was a finance director.
No, they would. I mean, the whole beauty of community transport is they do all the management of the
which
transport.
is good, yeah.
And the skilling up, but it does have a budgetary implication, obviously.
Everything
does. Spoken as an accountant.
Yes.
Good. Any other questions?
A point that again, it's a perception that across all organisations in the area there needs to be greater representation and involvement of the community. Do you mean by the community in the charitable entities?
Well, the organisations need to be more representative of the community,
Yes.
and
Yes.
representation with kind of individuals from the community
Yes.
involved in those.
I agree with you. I agree with all that. That's not what that says. It's a semantic question. I think it should be by, not of, but that's just me.
Yeah, okay.
But I completely agree with you, and I
Yes,
wanted to raise that profile,
Yeah.
and it might be something that Westway might consider doing, which is running, and I know KCSE is looking at this too, is trying to bring in an educational facility where the local community could feel empowered and have enough self-esteem to put up their hands and say, yeah, I can help here. I can advise the Delgona Trust or the LGBT, whatever it is, because I know lots of people like that, and I can help them run facilities on their behalf. And they don't come in as volunteers, they come in very low as volunteers saying, well, I'll make the tea or I'll make the coffee. No one's coming in and saying, here, let me help you run the project. And I think that they don't have, it's not that they don't have the ability, it's they don't have the confidence to do it. And I think if you ran mini projects, someone did that, then you might get a better participation for this point.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't just be us, it would be other centres, and I think a higher level volunteering.
I think you're right as well. I think there's a lot of people who are, strangely enough, me working with Opening Doors, there's a lot of people who I'm sort of, I suppose this is quite rude, I've sort of said all of the elderly disabled and infirm, a lot of them aren't. They're fully capable people who have worked in industry for 30, 40 years who are capable of taking on bigger projects. No, I think you're absolutely right. But that's
I think what was that ISIS?
Yeah, I was going to say KCSC, because I was involved with Angela and some other people were looking at that, and that's exactly the sort of thing they're looking at developing some sort of program where people can have the skills to take on higher level roles within organisations. So I also sit on the board of an organisation called Olmec, and what we do is we upskill people from, I don't like the term personally, but BAME, B-A-M-E communities, to sit on boards. So we have a program called Black on Board, which is all about getting people from those communities to actually sit on boards, and then we go out and train them up. It's like a 12-week program. They're trained in all the requirements, and they sit on boards. So I believe Angela and the team at the Social Council are actually working on that, and perhaps that is something that Westway could maybe somehow work with, because it's also about the fact that if we do that, what boards are we going to then have access to put these people onto? There's no point in people doing the training and then they can't get a place.
Well, come onto our board. Can I take your card after
And what the Westway Trust can add to that as well is space as well, and making space available for physical hubs. Those activities we were talking about tonight about the example of Participatory City and Barking Back, which is quite an interesting project where they're running a number of, or they call them shops across the borough, but they're places where people can come together to kind of bring ideas together, volunteer, and develop their responses to specific community challenges as well. So it's a slightly different context, but again, it's a model that has relevance.
And I suppose that actually sounds like a brilliant project to be doing. I just had a close friend of mine who's a gay woman, and she was saying, she's in her 70s now, how awful it is to be in a position sometimes where, as an LGBT person, you're faced with prejudices in so many spaces, and I think that that's for the elderly in that situation.
And
often faced with,
and I agree with you about that. I don't like the BAME sort of thing because with that's something that's very prevalent. Because I got asked to volunteer because the practice I own as an accountant, we sponsored an event for elderly people, and we actually managed to get looped into doing it, and then I got tasked with exploring it. Then I looked at the fact that there is no actual community centre for anyone, and the people for that age group, so sort of it's broadened out across that. But you're absolutely right. It's
brilliant.
More questions? It's a very productive question.
Sorry, I did have another question. And I haven't been at the organisation very long, so this might be something that's very easy to answer. Do the third sector community, to not-for-profits, to community groups, is there a network in the area? Do they get together?
Yeah, social council is the umbrella group.
They've got SCOF, the voluntary organisations forum. Yeah, and then they've got a VAC as well, which is the Voluntary Agency Advice Forum, which is people like the Law Centre and CAB and the people in the South, Nucleus Advice Centre, and also there's a couple. And then there's one, I think they also have something for health, the health groups. And then what's her name? Does the supplementary school? No,
Joanna. Val?
Yeah, Val. Yeah. So there's a number of forums where all the voluntary sector organisations get together.
One of the things we committed at the board meeting that we had last week on this topic was that Westway would work with Kensington and Chelsea Social Council to look at how we can coordinate a little bit better some of the voluntary sector on some of these common issues, capacity building and training, and getting people into roles, and that can be at board level, but it could also just be doing a local project or being involved in a local organisation was one of the things that's going to come out as something we need to do as a collective group. Because some of the criticism that we've had through this research is that Westway sometimes works in isolation and unilaterally decides it's going to do this, and actually what we're wanting to do is build partnerships and do things together with organisations and support organisations to do more of their thing that they're really good at, and us playing that that supporting role, enabling.
Yes, more questions?
Well, yeah, you said something interesting about after-school care. People want after-school care. We have a preschool in the building, and they can't do after-school care because they can't. They don't supply it. They tried because people don't come in and ask for it. There wasn't enough takers, so they had to stop it. Now, so I'm intrigued that you said that.
Yeah, well, that's quite a common message that came out from quite a few of the consultations, that it's a barrier to adults getting into work.
I know, but it existed there for a period of time, and nobody took it up.
Is it because people don't know about it?
Well, it could be.
And the cost issue.
Yeah, I was going to say schools provide it, don't they?
I think that the issue is that the schools have lengthened their day, so the independent preschool who put their neck on the line didn't mark it properly, but also it's been filled. There are more. I might be wrong on this because it's not my forte, but I understand there are more preschool places have opened up, so their demand is down anyway with us. And
is there an issue about moving kids? So if you're not located at the school and it's before or after school, that if you're the parent, you drop them off, you have to go to work, you don't want to have to come back to them.
Yeah, I'm
so
sure.
That would be an issue for me. I wouldn't be able to use that service.
Yeah.
I need to drop them at the school. He needs to go to school, and I have to pick him up at the end of the day, and he has the before and after.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I don't, because you do a pop-up, very effective pop-up, don't you, Westway?
We got a crash.
I think my sister teaches in St Charles, and I think she was saying something like that there wasn't a demand for it, but also she was told I think she was advised by a union that they had to go back to the parents. They couldn't just be transferred. I think there's
When
something.
my daughters went to Bowersfields as an
Yeah.
example, but what used to happen, I mean, it's quite a number of years ago now, in the 20s, but so EC, the Earlsport Youth Centre, there used to be a scheme at the school where they would, you could arrange for your children to go to that centre, it's like 10 minutes walk. They'd have somebody escort a group of 15 or 20 kids in the evening to the youth centre and then you pick them up there.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, I don't know.
I think that's probably what I think people are terrified to do that these days. I think that's probably. I think it's more of a. Yeah, I think it is that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it has to be handed over to a named representative.
Yeah.
It's got to be all sort of official institutions.
Yeah.
Making it more and more difficult.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
So you're right about the pop-up schemes, very well
Yes,
received.
pop-ups, yeah.
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 And
there is a demand.
more so the regular things rather than the per se pop-up. I mean, it's meant to be a pop-up service. Phone up, we want a creche or a nursery. But we do quite a lot of regular things on a regular basis now, and they're very popular. We do quite a lot in the Curve as well, under contract. But there's a huge, yes, clearly there's a huge demand for it. But one of the challenges there is that there's a fixed amount of time that you can leave a child or look after a child, isn't there? Maybe that's the thing, that you have to have this, and then goes back to the parent and then goes on to something else, the child goes on to something else. And maybe that's an unnecessary
The problem seems to be that thing where you have to hand the child back to the parents in order for them to move from one space to another, which actually, if the parents consented, it doesn't make any sense.
It
But
needs
if-
organisation.
but if that-
Yeah. I mean, if you've got paid staff members trained and DBS cleared, I mean,
Yeah.
as a parent, you've made a choice that you trust those people to hand your kids over to, and then they're going to walk them or take them physically to another venue, and then that venue will take responsibility. I don't see.
I agree. I think that's more of a. I think that's something that needs to be explained to the schools as well. So I think it's a kind of pass the buck. This is not something we don't want to think about. Well, 3:30 is when we close. Do you know what I mean? It's
also,
sort of,
that youth workers now don't want to be considered to be childcare minders. They're there to teach boxing or to teach them art, you know, and they don't want just to be
They're
dumped
supposed
with
to
a
be
naughty boy.
informal educators. I mean, that's supposed to be their role.
But the kids have to want to come, not because the parents have told them.
Yeah.
Well, it does feel like
challenges.
there's just a disconnect. With it. The childcare sector is under massive pressure. You hear about lots of independent childminders and nurseries going out of business because they can't afford the increasing wages and kind of the kind of free hours. But clearly there is a disconnect here between what people are telling us in probably more isolated parts of the kind of community and actually what sectors.
Can I ask the folks at Westway Trust, what questions are arising for you from this? What challenges are being posed to you? What's your thinking there?
Gosh, I mean, I think our biggest challenge is to try and distill down the 3 or 4 things that we can deliver, because it's just vast what's in this report. We have to prioritise. We're due to have we've had a first session with the trustees where they've given us some feedback. We're then going to go back to our sort of teams with Hatch and talk through the data and start to say, this is where we think, given our resources and our expertise and where the gaps are, where we can add value, and be really clear with everybody that we're doing this and we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise what happens, in my experience of being in this organisation, is that we just get pulled all over the place, and because there are so many things we could get involved in, and we're sort of all things to all people and then end up really not delivering very much effectively.
Yeah.
So that would be a tough conversation with us internally, it would be a tough conversation with our board, and it would be a tough conversation with the community in the end, because we will have to say, we're going to focus on this, this and this. And that is not doing the other things.
And I think that'd be excellent.
Yeah.
I think because I mean you can only spread yourself too thinly otherwise. And also when you communicate we are not doing this, that leaves other people to say, we are going to take it up, or we're going to move on with it. So I think that's fair to people.
Yeah.
As local residents, do you have any thoughts about the proper role of Westway Trust, where they should be focusing based on what you've heard in these preliminary results?
As a local resident, I think I said to you earlier on, my grandmother used the laundry service at the Westway. So that's going back a very long time ago. I think everyone's under pressure now. I mean, I sit on a couple of voluntary boards. I think you just need to focus your attention on what you can do, rather than what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's the only thing, because you want to do all of it.
Yeah, we do.
You know,
It really is. Yeah.
But the simple fact is, like you said, it comes down to a financial constraint with a lot of it as well. You can't do it all. I think what you need to do is just be frank with people and say, look, we can't do this all.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I would say is that this, you alluded to it, we get something for a year, it starts working after 6 months, and at 11 months it's winding down because the budget's running out. And it happens. I've only been around a couple of years and I don't live in the borough, but it breaks my heart to see something that it's just happened to us. The funding, it's happened twice in 2 years. The funding stops dead. They say, oh yes, we're going to allow you to bid. This is last September. Going to allow you to bid. We're still not looking at this anti-isolation work that we had and was working really well. And the next thing is the self-empowerment projects. You need 3 to 5 years to make something work and then work effectively, and then it may or may not be self-financing, or you may get it grow into an even bigger project. But it's doing good, and funding something for a year or 6 months is just a waste of time.
Yeah.
I echo that, having worked as a resident, having worked in many organisations, including Delgado as a development manager, so I actually have seen this over and over again.
Yeah.
I also think that what you're saying actually is spot on. You need to be strategic, stick to 3 objectives or goals, and really deliver well on them. And what you can do is the collaboration work, working with other organisations, things that you can no longer do. Making sure it's hived off to the right people, making sure that the other organisations know that you're not going to be doing this, you're going to be developing that, and finding ways to, make it work, supporting maybe capacity building, enabling other organisations to take up some of that stuff.
I think within our report we've identified 3 things which probably mark the Westway Trust as being distinctive in the area. Firstly, it's spatial resource, and the property portfolio is something which just marks Westway Trust out from most of the community organisations in London, and that's a really powerful resource. So how do you use that to maximise the benefit for the community? The second is kind of how embedded you are, not just in being around 50 years, but also the fact that you're here in perpetuity because of the portfolio. And that gives you, the strength to build for the long term and really coalesce activity around you. And then the third is that kind of role that you have as quite a large kind of organisation to act as that kind of facilitator and kind of leader to bring people together as well, and how you then kind of start to shape specific activities from that. I think that's where it becomes quite interesting.
Brilliant, thank you. Any last final comments or questions?
Yeah, I mean, it goes actually both Isis's comment and Barney's and your question, which is one of the challenges. So quite a lot is identified in the report about coordinating a lot of the facilities and services, and some of that naturally falls into the areas of activity of other organisations. So we've got to be very careful about how we partner with and don't step on the toes and enable and work. It is that partnership working, so it's going to be really important.
But again, if you're strategic about partnership and passing the baton, that can be the premise on which it's based. So that the premise is not, we step in, we meet you, we hand this over to you, we step back, and then you say, so you're not stepping on toes.
And I agree, but some of it isn't even stepping in and doing the stuff. That will be stepping on toes because people already think they're doing it. But using this report as, to identify that there is more coordination that's needed and we need to play our role in that, which isn't necessarily the lead. So part of the challenge is we take this report and the learnings and do something with it, but not in a leadership sort of way, but driving it forward. So it's going to be, the way we deliver that is going to have to be sensitively done, but the partnership thing is going to be really key to delivering so much of the change.
I can tell you is key.
Yeah, one thing you could do, which no one else can do, because they don't, and I've said this, I think, to Alan, actually, not to you two, I might be wrong. I run a facility, lots of people around here run facilities, and when I call in a plumber, I'm paying through the nose.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. If you ran a team, which you probably do, of plumbers and electricians and and you have a maintenance people, why don't you market that? And you can charge us 80 quid call-out fee, not 180 quid call-out fee, which is what I get charged. And make it work for yourself. Because you've probably got good guys.
So kind of a master contract.
Well,
It's an idea. It's an idea.
Yeah. A similar thing from someone at Hatch UK, I think, who was saying about could we share, because we've got a hub in the Westway, so we've got about, I don't know, 18 or other sort of charities that work in our office facility, and they were saying, actually, could we not all share HR? Could we not all share finance? Could we not all share the back office?
Yeah.
You know, that's also potential.
Building maintenance issues.
Yeah.
Gas
Similar sort of
safety.
thing. It's an economies of scale thing.
Yeah.
So we could buy it in. It's
Well,
a big, the bigger.
Our team is actually relatively small, so we do use a lot of contractors, but the opportunity there, even in our current model, is actually to be a procurement hub. So, you know, we get, that's an interesting, I mean,
Do our gas safety, we can pay you in advance, do the gas safety certificate. We know that someone else is thinking about it. Someone as boring as hell. It's, you know, you've got to tick a box. Fire alarm system has to be tested, and then it's just off my desk, and we have to pay somebody. We might as well pay you. And you're doing it for your own facility.
Well, yeah.
And also frees up your time. That's one of the biggest
Only write more
headaches.
pictures.
That's one of the headaches that I've always had of trying to set things. It's all
Running your own
1,000 tasks that you don't want to
and
do.
the regulations
You've
get
got to
worse
pay-
every year.
It's a good idea. I'm wondering though, because I sit on Octavia Foundation, so Octavia Housing, we have a huge maintenance team. And I'm wondering now if actually that's a brilliant idea, whether those should be with a local housing provider, because they actually, Octavia Housing,
They subcontract people like me as though.
yeah, but they have a contract with them, so maybe there's a way within that to use, see what I'm saying? To have something where they provide something, because I don't know how, like you say, economies of scale, I don't know how it might work.
Well, nor do I, but I just.
Very, very
It's an
large.
idea.
Much less expensive to do it through a large organisation.
Yeah.
Small contracts.
Because we've still got a few here. I mean, how Kensington Housing, are they still here? No, they've been taken over.
But you've got Peabody, you've got
Peabody,
Catalyst, you've got
Notting Hill.
Notting Hill
Genesis.
Yeah. But I mean, Octavia might be worth thinking about them, because we're very much about keeping local Octavia so far anyway. So.
Wonderful. I'm going to move this on. Thank you. That was really useful. Very useful. Thank you, Barney. Barney, you said that you needed to go at some point.
I'm really keen to stay for another 15 minutes.
Excellent. Okay. So,
Okay, so over to me. I'll just introduce myself as to how I came into this, because the rest of the Westway Trust team know this. I'm obviously a local resident, but I also am the chair of something called the Edge Fund, which does participatory grant making for activism and campaigning. I don't know, have you both heard of participatory grant making?
I've not heard of, I've heard about grant making, but I've not heard of Edge.
Okay, but the model?
Yes.
You've heard of it, and yourself? Okay, so the premise is really that rather than the usual way of doing grant making, which means control and decision making is in the hands of those giving the grants out, the philanthropic organisation, the funder, etc. It's now decision making is shifted to the recipient of the grant, those applying for the grant, and that's the general premise. So it's about the devolution of power from the provider to the recipient. So you can swap around. That's the main thing. What I've got, because I'm going to be quick, is I've got the thing that we presented to the board a couple of weeks ago, so I'll just go through some of the headlines. So there are many different interpretations and different ways of structuring it, and when I say interpretations, what I'm saying really is the extent of how the power sits, across that trajectory. Sometimes it's a little bit, there's some more power with the giver of the grant, and sometimes there's none whatsoever. There's a lot of momentum growing amongst funders, not just in the UK, but the model's been around globally for quite a while, quite a lot in America, in places like Australia, in Europe. I'm also involved using my Edge hat, sitting on a couple of things in Europe, Edge Funders Alliance, which is a network of European funders, many of which have participatory grant models in place. There's an increasing number of funders that seek to challenge the way that we do things, and that they're looking for more egalitarian or inclusive, participatory ways of doing things. There's UK funders are starting to increasingly look at the model. So the thing I've spoken about a few times is, which is quite impressive, is that Land Kelly Chase, Tudor Trust, Lloyd's and the Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust have all come together and advertised for a post recently where they're trying to now look at how they can change their grant giving models and adopt a more participatory way of doing it. And those are some big funders, and the fact that they're doing that is really positive. We've done a lot of work in Edge in influencing this model of funding, so we're hoping that we can claim some of that. And really, there are, if I go through some of the models, we've got like some of the important things within the model. Non-grant makers set the priorities, so that ordinary people, residents or recipients, that they're involved in developing strategies, and they sit on boards of advisory groups. So again, coming back to what I was talking about, this whole thing about local participation, it fits in with that. And research is conducted as well, possibly through these things, and they make final decisions. It's different targets for participatory grant making. So the piece of work that we are going to undertake with Westway Trust, myself and Anne Saunders, who is also a consultant, is about looking at what the community want locally. So we're looking at a local participatory grant fund as opposed to, I don't know, a grant fund for environmentalism or for LGBTQI or something. And we will conduct some work. Anne is conducting some desk research by speaking to other funders and kind of sifting through what's out there already. I will be leading on running workshops, which will be held in the 5 wards, Colville, this one, Dalgarno, Notting Barnes. I'm too old, I've been here too long. And we will hold workshops ward by ward, invite local residents and organisations, and hear what they have to say about what the priorities are ward by ward, to kind of fitting in what you're saying about the Hatch report, because we do recognise that in some wards it's more of a desert, there's less resources, and other wards are a better resource in terms of transport or sports facilities or shops or whatever it is. So getting a real sense of what people want in each ward, and that will then inform on how we set priorities. And then the next stage of the workshopping and the consultation is really trying to establish what sort of participatory grant process do we want. Because again, they're different models. So at Edge Fund, we're known as the chickpeas people. So we bring our grant applicants, our grantees, all those who apply for each round together with people some who are grant givers, other members of Edge Fund activists. We have a funding day where people hear what each other is doing and get a sense of the kind of projects that are seeking funding. We then have a series of cups or things, bowls or whatever they are, and a bunch of receptacles, that's the word, and a bunch of chickpeas. And the premise is everybody's given chickpeas, and the names of the organisations who've applied for funding that day are on the table next to the receptacles, and they're voted for. And those that get the most chickpeas get the most votes, the most money. So it's done on a kind of, what do you call it, pro rata basis, or
sliding scale.
Sliding scale, kind of, so that somebody who's good at maths does that, not me. And then, people go away. The happy, hopefully, because they've heard from each other and they all agree. There are other models, like the soup kitchen model, which is where people come together, have soup or a meal or whatever it may be, and they have conversations and then they vote on who should get what amount of money. So there are lots of different models, and what works for one group might not work for another, so that's what we're keen to discern from this community. Edge Fund, we give small grants, up to £3,000 for organisations and up to £1,000 for individuals. We're not so keen on funding individuals, we'd rather fund organisations and have individuals work with an organisation, because we don't want, for example, we can't fund somebody who's running training, even if it's really needed, even if it's empowerment training or citizenship training that would really be beneficial if they're paying themselves, you see what I'm saying? So we'd rather pay an organisation and then they use the money to pay for the training or whatever, their capacity building or whatever. So we're quite a small fund, and we are activist campaign based, so we don't really fund charities, we don't fund organisations who have an income of more than 20,000. So we have we set our priorities, and again, what we're trying to get from the local community is what sort of priorities, how do we want this to happen? There was some conversation yesterday about maybe money just handed over to each ward group, and then they decide how they're going to distribute it. Some of the pros, and I'm very biased, so I think there's more pros, is that you're moving towards embedding flatter systems and processes. It's about, again, collectivism, accountability, inclusivity. It's also being used to kind of find and adapt theories of change within charities and organisations, because the information that comes back can be used for that, and in that way kind of empowering the organisation itself as well to look at how it can open itself up and become more inclusive, less hierarchical. It places decision making in the hands of non-grant makers, which is the most important thing. The people who don't ordinarily make decisions, and there is an argument that we call it lived experience. If you come from a BEMA community or an LGBTQI community or a migrant and refugee community, and you're wanting to do something to address issues, then in many ways you are the expert. And by doing this, we're recognising that. It's also a way of forming partnerships, collaboration, and people understanding each other and what each other is doing. So we've spoken a lot about organisations understanding what people are doing, but also groups on the ground understanding what the other people are doing. We were talking earlier about people being suspicious and, why is so-and-so getting this or doing that? It's a way of also breaking that down, because people come together, work together, and understand what the other people are doing. So some of the cons are, probably one of the biggest ones is structures, like your legal constitution, your legal structures, whether it permits funding certain things in a certain way and what. So that has to be very clear what the organisation can and cannot do. And an important thing about this is to be transparent and straight up from the beginning, so there's no misconceptions. Time and effort. So the people involved in the decision making, i.e. the grantee, the applicants or the grantees, have to put time and energy into being part of that process, because they're choosing to make a decision. So it's not just like fill in a form online or fill in a form, just send it off and somebody else does with that, and then you either get the money or you don't. You're actually invested in that. Imbalance in power, somebody mentioned this again yesterday, just to be checking on that, because clearly if you had, say, a very, very small group of volunteers, and then you had a bigger organisation that had an income of 70,000 and employed, 3 or 4 members of staff, then you've got very different disparity in power dynamics in the room. So just being aware of how that plays into decision making, and it's kind of what you mentioned about confidence. How confident this little group is, maybe or group of women whose language, English is not their first language, for example. So just being aware of that. And then the final thing, and one of the most important things, is that the process should be honestly entered into by the funder. Is not lip service. So there's no point in getting people to do all this work and get involved, and then all their views, their experiences, their opinions, the decision making is not taken into consideration, because then it's not honest. So one of the things as well is about building trust with communities that you're then going to empower via financial support. GDPR. I forgot to mention that last night. We just need to be aware of that as well. So I think any one of us in the sector, that's sitting everywhere. So it's something that we got to mention. And then some examples, if people you were interested, I can give it to you afterwards. But there's some groups that we like Disability Rights Fund, our participatory grant fund for disabled people. It's in the UK. There's another one that I've worked with kind of internationally called the Free Young Feminist Fund in the USA, which is all women and girls, and it is around women's issues, feminist issues, and it is all decision making is controlled by that group. There's a Red Umbrella Fund, which is set up in the Netherlands, and that's a really interesting one. And they are a group of sex workers, and they have set up their own fund to basically empower sex workers to get money to do projects or to deal with issues that affect them. When I was in Barcelona in 2017, we did a sex worker tour, and some of the members of the group came along because we were at the Edge Funders Alliance. There was lots of different large funders there. And again, it was really fascinating, and I learned a lot because I wouldn't know much about these sorts of things. X-Y Solidarity Fund, which is interesting because they have no donor involvement. So they take whoever gives the money they take it and they do what they want with it, and they don't report back, or they don't have any, so it's completely, and also Global Green Grants Fund, which is an environmental fund in the USA. I think important things to note is that in terms of handing the money over and giving that autonomy to the decision-making groups, it's important to think about things like evaluation and reporting back. Because in most circumstances, when one monitoring or evaluation is done when you give a grant, but after the Edge Fund, we don't do that. We make our process really, really simple, 2 A4 sides, and this has come after a number of years of trial and error and reviewing. And what we do is we're trying to find more innovative ways of getting, monitoring or not even monitoring, evaluating the impact of the money that we give. So vlogs, rather than getting people to write, and something we call the radical sharing forum, which is something we've done where we bring groups together, and the idea is that they hear from each other, they learn again about the work that people are doing, and they get an understanding of how people have used the work, the funding for the work. So thinking again outside the box of different ways of doing it. So in terms of what we're doing, Anne and I are in the research stage. I'm at a process where I'm working with Phil, who's a member of the what's Phil's title?
Associate with fundraising, yeah.
Right, so he's involved with the fundraising, and we've identified some venues in the 5 wards that we're trying to fix up the meetings, which will happen next month, the workshops rather, and we'll be completing the consultation with the other funders, I think by the end of next week. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow as well, actually. Then I'm going to have for yourself for comms. I'm working on some text, like a blurb, to go to comms, so you can use it for flyers and social media and stuff, to put it out. So we really try and really get it out to everyone in each ward. And then we will bring back all the stuff we get. We'll then hold a couple of workshops, as I said, where it's more just about everybody coming to get a sense of how we want to do it, and then all the findings will be distilled down, and hopefully we will have an amazing set of information that we will deliver to Westway Trust for a framework to be developed in September, and then the pilot would follow from the findings. And that's basically what's happening.
So you're moving to this participatory plan?
Yeah, we commissioned this. We want to pilot it and see how we do it. I mean, we've always had this. Well, as long as I've been involved in this organisation, there's been a sense that people want to have more control over the spaces, but also the money and how it's allocated and who gets what. And we have a grant making panel, so it's not we the trust that decide where the money goes. But it feels like we need to go a little bit further actually, and I personally feel quite comfortable about if we're allocating a pot of money to a group of people around a framework and saying, kind of work out how this money can be best utilised.
I think
it would be quite exciting.
I think it's a really good idea. I used to sit on a grant make. I used to be on the board of the ESU, the English Speaking Union. We used to do it on the grant making capacity thing of it, and a lot of the times we had no clue. Like you'd just sit around and you'd go. I remember once saying, there was me and it was 4 other men, and we were deciding the Female Literature Award or something like that, and it was because we were the only ones who turned up. So I think it's a brilliant idea. I think you're going to have a lot of it's going to be an interesting experiment, and you're going to be pulling your hair out a long way. I think it's the way forward.
Well, the only thing I would say is that there are big fragments of the community around here who might just decide to WhatsApp everyone and say, get around here, we want this one to win. I don't know how you govern that.
Well, this is what we need to work out. I mean, it's interesting what you said, because at the Edge Fund, what we do is we have particular groups, like we call them community councils, so we have LGBTQI, race and ethnicity, working class and oppressed communities. We have women, we have an environmental group, we have a systemic change group, and we have Gypsy, Traveller and Roma group, and I think a disabled people group. And so in those community councils, because we have a membership of like a couple of hundred people, they keep growing. So our members then sit in those groups according to their characteristics, I suppose, or traits.
Yeah.
And so, so I'm in the race and ethnicity group. I suppose I could be in the disabled group because I've got dyslexia, but I tend to stay in, and so I would, when we have applications sent, part of the sifting process is that those groups have a look through, because obviously if somebody,
But that's great that you've got that, because I think like you said, I hadn't even quite considered that people could then go vote for my name, and I think we'd all be tempted to do that if we're in a committee. But I think having a good sort of filtering process.
Nothing wrong with marketing. It's when you get 100. It's lobbying for your particular project, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But it's when you've got a big, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound racist, but it might be LGBT, and there's a big. And we're putting in for funding for doing something for that group, and then they all come en masse and drop in a chickpea in the right pot, and then some poor little thing.
But you're saying that it's almost like one person per project, so you wouldn't
Yeah,
have this kind of
exactly.
But that's my worry. I don't
Also,
understand.
the way our funding rounds work is you spend the day together. So
yeah.
we call it a kind of like a
beauty
almost
parade.
I suppose you want to call it a marketing table or whatever, where we have, in the morning, you'll have let's say there's 20 groups there, you'll have 10, and they all have their little stall with information, and everyone goes around and talks to those groups, and those groups are presenting, and each of the people there in the group present what they're doing, and then you swap over, and then everybody listens. So what you do is you break down, we tend to break down that kind of, my group has to be funded. I think people all walk into the room thinking, my group has to be funded, but in my own experience, having been at many of these rounds, and I got there because I'm the chair, because I came into it as a recipient, as a grant recipient. And what's really interesting is when I walked in thinking, my group has to get funded, when I heard the stories and the issues faced by other groups, it does change the dynamic. Suddenly it's like, actually, you know what, they really deserve this. And people tend to start to have a more collaborative approach.
It's always constructive networking, isn't it, for charities?
Yeah.
I mean, we hope. I mean, there'll always be some, of course.
Any question over here?
I was just going to ask, just with the chickpea example, is it all or nothing with funding? So, for example, if I've asked for £5,000 funding for my project, I can't get it off the ground with anything less than that. But if I get some chickpeas, but not as many as I needed, is it?
Yeah, it's done on I don't know what the word is, because there's a word that we use when you
Pro rata.
Proportionality.
So it's proportioned. So yes, there is the risk, of course, that you've asked for 3,000 and you go away with 1,200.
Yeah.
But that's.
Then you give it to someone that you want.
But then maybe you've met someone else who's doing something so similar, and then you collaborate.
Then you've got to get it all in.
Presumably, you can't have 50 people, 150 people in the room. You've already done a sifting process for the ones that will and won't work. So you've got some 50 really good quality tables.
I mean, that's what we hope. I mean, again, the caveat is that this is about handing it to the local community. So what Dalgarno would decide for Dalgarno might not be what and we'll have to take all that into consideration, how that will work. I mean, I won't pull out in here. Two are my age and too old to start.
Well, I can't afford to do it anymore. So.
I do think that we'll be doing a lot of refining work, and that's there will be a lot of that will be happening.
Any other questions or ideas about that? Good. Any final points anyone wants to make? Any questions of the Westway Trust or?
No. Well, actually, what percentage of the money is it next year you're going to move to this?
Yeah, we haven't decided that, but we have, we've agreed that we'll do a pilot. So, ISIS will tell us, ISIS will say to us, to do this, and will say, to do the pilot, we really need this sort of money, based on the feedback we've got, based on, so, and then we'll have a conversation about that. But the idea is we do it, pilot it, we make sure it works, and then we iron out any of the teething problems, and then we might then extend it.
And there's also the possibility that at some point, Westway do this, that there are, Octavia set up a little grant fund, and I sit on the board then, I had some issues with what they were doing, I've spoken to Rena in depth about it, but there might be a way to collaborate, so it might be that eventually, Exactly, so it might be a way that 2 or 3 organisations come together and all put into the pot.
Yeah.
You know, so there's
Yeah.
lots
And then
of
maybe local philanthropists see this as a
yeah.
really good way of giving to hyper local people in control of their own.
I mean, there are we get a lot of money from philanthropists, people who have inherited money, say, and they're really political and they're not happy with how it's come. They just want to put it, you know, and that happens a lot. We'll just get anonymous donations.
That's
and stuff.
ISIS or is that Edge? Is that's Edge?
I'm ISIS.
Yeah.
Oh, your name is ISIS?
Yeah, sorry.
I wrote down ISIS, I'd forgotten that. I wrote ISIS down there. I was thinking, which one is it?
Edge fund, Edge fund. So, you know, there's lots of possibilities. There is an increasing appetite for it because there are people that, you know, in this world that we're in, a lot of people want to sort of, you know, get engaged in various.
And the
Actually,
consequence.
what's interesting, I think, about the world we're in is that people or philanthropists like to give to not necessarily to institutions because we have to take a cut of management and blah, blah, blah. And if you can give directly to the area or the cause, it's very
That's the whole thing.
effective, very
Comic
effective.
relief coming under fire at the moment.
Yeah.
People
Do
are
you know
really,
what they
really
take?
scrutinising it.
Yeah.
What does Comic Relief take?
Take as a management cut.
Yeah.
They've just got a big administration.
Yeah.
They've got an amazing.
Well,
The Red Cross
It's
is
20%.
well, it's 40% of the Red Cross.
Yeah.
But they've got a massive building. So it can't be cheap.
But Red Cross do direct delivery, don't they? They do directly deliver, or do they just give it out? Because Red Cross deliver, don't they, on the ground?
Red
Yeah,
Cross,
they're
yeah,
doing
International
give it out.
process. I mean, that's expensive.
Yeah, they're not a grant giver.
No.
The RSPCA came on the scrutiny for its structure. Wasn't it? There's I think it was a $500,000 rental for something, and it turns out it wasn't a real place to rent.
It's actually information about
Yeah.
amount of slice and goes into management. So.
But I think all of it says though is that people are now taking more of an interest, which can only be a good thing, really, can't it?
Yeah. If through this we can get more local people
Yeah.
taking
An engagement. Yeah.
you know, doing things, building capacity, doing projects that they want to do that benefit their local area.
Which is also what you were saying about the fact that actually even being engaged in that process means that people's capacity is built, their skills are just, you know,
Yeah,
and
it can only be a good
yeah,
thing.
it helps to build confidence as well.
On that unanimous note, shall we close and thank our 2 speakers very much indeed. And our guests, thank you very much. And thank you very much.
ISIS, thank you.
And again, thank everyone for coming and having a really creative discussion. Really great. Thank you.